Welcome back to Chapter 1. We're continuing in the chapter a few pages at a time. We're going to start on the right column of page 10. And we're going to talk about disabilities and individual differences. And probably end up at the top right corner of page 14. Okay. The topic is disability and individual differences. They start out defining the word disability. It's very important to understand that disability is a limitation of performing activities. Limitation of performing activities. Maybe you can't move an arm, maybe you can't walk, maybe you have loss of range of motion in the back or neck. Maybe it's cognitive limitation. Okay? Remember that it's not a medical condition, it's not a difference in appearance or a defect of some type. A disability is a limitation in performing an activity caused by something else. It's not medical, not somebody looks different than you do, and some kind of defect. So keep that in mind, it's very important. It's important that if a person does have a disability, that it's usually a good thing to have that disability diagnosed. Without a diagnosis of that disability, sometimes you can't get the resources you need to bring you up to equal playing field with everybody else. My son has Down syndrome. It's productive for us to have him diagnosed with Down syndrome. That way he qualifies for adaptations and modifications, getting an aid when he's included in the classroom. There's reasons when it's good to be diagnosed with a disability. Again, so it's be brought into an equal playing field than if you don't have that disability label. Okay? A lot of times there needs to be a legal classification in order to get those resources. Okay, and we'll move down the page and not hit everything here. Most of you can read and understand on your own. Also, there's an important concept down near the bottom, the second paragraph. It says laws that require free, appropriate public education for children with disabilities were passed in many countries. It used to be if you had a disability, they wouldn't let you into the school. They would put you in a school that's kind of equal to the school and sometimes equal but separate. Well, that was a law they kicked out a long time ago that had to deal with races as well as disabilities. So a child is entitled, a person is a child, to the free and appropriate public education. If they have the cognitive ability to be in a regular classroom by themselves, they should be there. If they need an aid to be successful, then they need that aid. And it still needs to be free. You can't charge them more or less and say we don't have the money to do that. Free and appropriate public education. It's a very important concept. Okay, we need to go to the next page 11 and look at individual differences. A lot of times it's the environment, the person's environment, interactions that significantly deviate from the norm. Remember, the norm on your bell curve is 3% on each side, either the low end or the extremely high end. And then in the middle, it peaks. 68% of your people are in the middle. That's what you call the norm. And then you would move to the top end, or those who performed higher than normal. So individual differences, you have to see how that personal environment affects them and how they need help to interact more along the concept of the norms. Here they talk about the influence of American lifestyle and interaction between eating and exercise. They point out that 60% of our population is overweight. Another 33% of those are obese. So physical activity is important. So not only do we need it for our children and individuals with special needs, we need it for the whole population to move forward. Okay. We talk about some uniqueness and central themes of the textbook. The author goes through different parts of the title. One thing the author points out very early is that attitudes is very important. If you have fear of individuals with special needs, or you have fear of somebody, that attitude towards them will greatly affect you. If you've never been exposed, you have that fear. It is the teacher's goal to help people get past that, help change the attitudes and barriers of those around in this school system. We have seen in environments with my son where the person in charge of that organization was fearful of people with special needs. That radiated down to other people, and they were fearful. We've been in other environments where the leader in charge was very comfortable in accepting of individual special needs, and you see the people under that leadership accept individuals with special needs. So it's attitudes that need to be changed, and exposure to help change the world for our individuals with special needs so they're accepted with honor, and as just another one person in our society that functions more or less different than some of us, but they're still human beings. Okay, the title starts with physical activity, adaptive physical activity. The book used to be physical education, but it only referred to those in the education from age 21. Now our society is moving to the physical activity stage for a lifetime. So that's how the book has changed its title to reflect the concept of getting everyone involved, keep them involved as long as they can. And it creates a better quality of life for that individual. Down a little footnote here, they have the term portfolio, which we'll visit again. Portfolio is when anybody does something. Say you're a singer, you would have tape recordings of your voice. It'd be a portfolio of maybe where you started in a music lesson and where you ended up. So you compare the beginning and the end. Maybe do something very well and you want to demonstrate that. It could be in writing, where they start out with a writing, where they have some of their best work included in there. It can include pictures or reports, videotapes, whatever's in that portfolio that reflects that person's ability more accurately than a standardized test would. So if I ask for a portfolio on a test, don't tell me it's something that an educational student would use to get a job. That's the wrong portfolio. The portfolio in this course means a collection of work by the student to demonstrate the abilities and to better communicate maybe the needs of that individual. So we talked about physical activity. It's an umbrella term for all that you do to be active. Recreation is kind of similar to leisure time. They both have the concept that it's not structured, there's no rules. What you do in your free time just to enjoy living. You might be walking, singing, recreation, and leisure is what you do in your free time. Sport is much more structured. For individuals with special needs, it can be inclusive, which means that you have an individual on a team of typically developing so that they're playing alongside each other. It could be separate, so you could have only a person with a disability on that team. You have wheelchair sports, and again, those can be inclusive. You could have typical people playing a wheelchair sport where they get in and they can't use their feet and they use the wheelchair. I've done that a couple times with softball and basketball. It's a lot of fun. It can be ambulatory, where you have to be able to walk or not walk, or it can be mixed. My son plays basketball for Special Olympics. Their team is a mixed team. Most of the children on the court at one time have a special needs. They have a cognitive disability for Special Olympics, but they will also have one or two typically developing kids on the court that help direct the children while the teammates while they're playing. I keep using the word children, but it could be all the way up to 50 and 60-year-olds at Special Olympics. So you'd have typical developing individual on the court guiding the rest of the team and empowering the team. So that would be a mixed team. The sport model, remember that you have to meet those standards set by the NSAPE, and you're going to come across a term called able body, or AB. Uh, those in special needs will refer to those not in a wheelchair as able body, and that would be us who have full function of all of our limbs. You do want to make sure you know the difference between disability sport and adapted sport. Disability sport is very important. Usually refers to people out of education. They're playing out in a select league or a select team or league. They're out at the Y. It's not a school-based education. A lot of times those individuals would be insulted because they're not part of they're not school people. The term that you usually refer to PE and school sports is adapted sport, and that's usually in the education setting, and it's appropriate. You do not want to use adaptive, you want adapted sport. Adaptive means that it's a cognitive, emotional issue. So it's a big difference. Adapted is for special needs. Adaptive is for those with a behavioral issue, and they're separate. So make sure you get them different. Disability sport or adapted sport. The book continues to talk about cross-disciplinary interactions to help the individual. There's different terms that come under cross-disciplinary. You have cross-disciplinary, intradisciplinary, and multidisciplinary. Cross-disciplinary is the highest use of the term. It refers to individuals of many different disciplines sharing their information, openly sharing. There's no boundaries, and they work together for the betterment of it. Your next level of a little more self-contained and not as much sharing going on is your interdisciplinary. And that's where you have a lot of individuals working together, but they draw boundaries with their discipline, whatever their specialty might be. Multidisciplinary is the most exclusive, where there's not a lot of sharing. They come in, they do give some information, but they are the opposite end of cross-disciplinary, where everything's kind of freely shared and boundaries have been erased a whole lot. Multidisciplinary is the term used in federal law, so know how that one works by itself. And then you have lifespan, which again is from birth until the end. We're going to stop there on that page and go over to the next page. And we're going to talk about modifications. We're going to start at the bottom of page 13. And I may run out of time here and have to start with this page on a different tape. Let's see how far we can get. A modification is a change that is made to help the person be on the level field. A modification must be clearly documented so the school that permits the teacher to use different standards for testing. So a modification is a child who has trouble with multiplication because of disability. They would be able to make the test more appropriate for that individual. So modification is changing the standard to meet the needs of the person. It must be clearly documented as part of the school records so the teachers can do this. An accommodation, we're about to run out of time here, is where you make things easier for the person to participate appropriately easier. So you could move them closer to home plate if they're pitching so the ball can get there. They can use a wider bat. The bases can be closer. They can use more light. You can adjust the rules. It's much more flexible. It needs to be documented. It helps the person. It's not